Hello, Marnie Ginsberg here from readingsimplified.com, and I've got the one how to solve comprehension problems, and it's also our second episode in Ask the Reading Coach. So tune in to find out if you have a comprehension problem. And in the meantime, I'm going to make a little forwarding action here. So those of you who are in our Facebook group can also find this. So give me a second and then we'll get straight into that comprehension problem answer. Okay, I think that's going. So Amber is a parent and she wrote me a question about one of her children, and she said that he's not doing well with reading and she thinks he has a comprehension problem. So the first thing that I did was not assume that he actually has a comprehension problem, because most teachers and parents see the outcome of a comprehension problem, but actually they don't know for sure if it really is a comprehension problem. And by and large, my experience is that there are few children that actually have true comprehension problems alone. Usually the root of students' comprehension problems is actually a decoding or word identification or fluency problem. So first I asked her to do this one quick activity to see if it truly was a reading comprehension problem. And so I asked her to read to her child a passage that was fairly short and somewhat definitely at that child's level. Read it out loud to the child and then see if the child can comprehend it. So if the child is able to comprehend grade level text that is read aloud to him, or that he hears on an audiobook or CD or computer or whatnot, then the child probably doesn't really mostly have a comprehension problem. Mostly there's probably some kind of underlying word decoding, word identification, or fluency problem. But this parent actually said after she did that little mini test that indeed the child had difficulty with that task. Even listening to a passage was hard for him to come up with a summary. So, okay, so it does sound like a comprehension problem. So if you've gone through that check and you still have a child with a comprehension problem, what do you do? Well, one of the easiest things to do is just to break down the text into its smallest parts. So I would start with a sentence or a paragraph from a story, probably a short story, and I would read that aloud to the student and then ask him to tell me what I just said. Ask him to summarize it or retell it. It's really important that he puts it in his own words so it shows the understanding. And if he can't do it, then I would model it for him and then ask him to do it again and keep questioning him or modeling it until he can do the summary at the smallest level, whether it be the sentence level or the small paragraph level. Once the student can do at least a sentence, then you do the paragraph level, and then you do several paragraphs, and then you do the whole text. But as you progress through these higher and higher levels, you keep asking the student, you keep pausing, and you keep asking the student to summarize and build from the previous sentences, paragraphs, or pages. So you might read the story of the Three Little Pigs. Maybe that student hadn't heard the Three Little Pigs. So you read a little bit about the wolf going to the first house, and then you pause, and then you ask for the student to put it in his own words. And then if he's successful with that, then you read a little bit more about the pig going to the next house. And then you ask the student to put the whole thing back into the summary. And then he went to the second pig's house. Here's what happened. And so you keep building until the student can put together a summary of the entire thing. And this works really well. So if you don't know what kind of text to use, you might pick an anthology, like a literature anthology. The E.D. Hirsch books, What Your Kindergartner Needs to Know or What Your First Grader Needs to Know, etc., is one place to find short little passages that could be read aloud, and you can break the task down, or any reading series that you happen to have. Just make sure it's at the student's age level, and then check for the summary after these short increments. If you're just tuning in, what we're talking about is how to solve a comprehension problem. So say hello or let me know where you're from. And if you have any questions about comprehension, that's today's topic. I'm really eager to share more about it or hear what you're thinking. So that is really all that's needed for solving a comprehension problem. You can get more complicated. You can get into more questioning. Hi, if you're just tuning in, we are talking today about how to solve comprehension problems. And even if your student really does have a comprehension problem. So if you are interested in the topic of comprehension, stay tuned. So we're talking about breaking the task down and how you don't need to do much more than reading one small bit at a time, asking the student to comprehend, to summarize it or retell it, and then reading another part of the passage, asking the student again to summarize it or retell it, and keep building up and up, starting with the smallest amount. So usually that solves a lot of the problems. Now there can be some other issues that make this even more challenging, and so there could be definitely some more in-depth strategies you might want to take or tackle for comprehension. But really, if you do this activity, it will resolve a lot of the comprehension problems that that you encounter. And one other thing I was going to say about comprehension, oh, well, first of all, there is a post that I wrote about the importance of summarization. Really, it's the foundational skill that you need to have to be able to think analytically about text. If you can't at least come up with a summary or a retelling, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, then it's going to be really hard for you to think really critically or analytically at that higher level. So before I worry too much about whether the student is making connections between text or making connections from an early part of the text and a later part of the text, I want to make sure at least that we've got the basics covered, that the student gets the gist or gets the summary or gets the ability to retell. So, in summary, if you're wondering about whether a student has a comprehension problem or not, the first thing to do is read aloud something to them that is at their grade level and see if they can comprehend it. Can they summarize it for you? Can they retell it? If they can do that, then probably their main issue that you're seeing in the class is not just comprehension. But if they can't do that, then go to the smallest level of text, break the text down into sentences or paragraphs, and ask the student to do the summary at that level. And if the student is unsuccessful at that level, then just simply model it and then ask the student to copy you or to do something similar to you so that the student can kind of get the hang of what's needed to be able to comprehend. Then you build from there. After you read one paragraph aloud to him, then you read out to him, and then the student summarizes both paragraphs. Then you read the third paragraph, and the student summarizes all three paragraphs. So you're just building the skill that he might not have if he was on his own. And sometimes this problem arises with older kids who've been frustrated with their ability to not read words really well. Hi, Lisa. And so if you have an older student who has this problem, sometimes they just have gotten kind of lost in reading because they're so frustrated with they don't know the words and their brain kind of switches off. And so this activity of breaking the text down into its components, into its smallest bits, and asking them to summarize it as they go throughout the text kind of turns the switch back on. Most kids are able to summarize text that is read aloud to them, especially if it's at their age level. But they sometimes just need a little bit of awareness of that's what actually happens when we're reading. And so the going through the text that way, breaking it down and explaining it to him if needed, may be all that's needed to turn that light back on or to turn the switch back on. And so whether you have a young kid who seems to not get some of the basic stories, or an older kid who has kind of a history of frustration with reading, and the brain is kind of tuned out from trying to work hard at this task, you can see some pretty quick progress with this. I have seen recently just 2 middle school boys who, in the last year, they were reading maybe a year or 2 behind word identification, and then their word attack, their ability to read nonsense words, was even lower. So I worked on building that ability up for learn to decode a lot of the stuff we talk about here in Reading Simplified. But then, after they were successful at reading unknown words and learning more about recognizing words by sight, they still kind of had a residual comprehension problem. And usually, because it resolves so quickly, I really do think it's just a matter of kind of a bad habit developed because of the frustration of word reading. So I would do the exact same thing I just talked about, have them read a paragraph, tell me what it means, and then put what it means. And doing that across the course of maybe 6 to 9 sessions, they were well above grade level with their comprehension after that. Another thing that helped, has helped, are doing our comprehension programs online where they do the same activity. The teachers, so they are forced to come up with an answer and specifically attack what the main idea is and get that summary, and then if they don't get it, then they get some feedback, and the texts are short. So when you do a short text, you're getting more practice at this skill of making sure that did the student understand what he just read. And so sometimes a computer program that does that can be very helpful. So if you're just tuning in, I've been talking about how to solve comprehension problems, and even if you have a comprehension problem. And if you want to learn more about that, please check the post that's in this link. There's a lot more about how important summarization is in that passage. And if you have any questions, I'm game. I'd love to talk to you about this issue. And I forgot to mention early on, I have to let you know, I am in San Diego. This is like a hotel room. I'm so excited to be here. Let me see if you can see some of my view. You know, I'm a mom and an online business person, doesn't get away very often, so I'm excited to come here and go to a conference where I'm going to learn about how to kind of amplify the message of Reading Simplified. So it's a real treat to get away and learn. So that's about to start soon. So that's why I'm in this kind of different place here. So I guess that's it for our second episode of Ask the Reading Coach. I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any questions about it, please let me know in the comments. Hearing what you guys have to say, and if you haven't already chosen to follow Reading Simplified and get notifications whenever I go live, please do that now. If you just click the little, kind of like a little arrow or upside down triangle at the top of your Facebook page, you'll see an option to get notified, because I'm unable, with my schedule and family, I'm unable to kind of do this reliably at a certain time at this point. So I just kind of get on when I can. So if you want to not miss a Facebook Live, then go ahead and click that notification. So thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you soon or talking soon.